I went to basically all Maori primary school intermediate. I think we had about 95% Maori students. And then when I moved to high school, it was probably about 10. And then university, engineering is probably like 0.1. I think there's like 2 of us in a class of like 300 or so. It became pretty apparent quite early on that I had this opportunity and that I wanted to use it.
Kia ora, I'm Troy, here as CEO, and welcome to Stirring the Pot. Thanks for connecting. If you're new, here's what you can expect. We're going to be talking the tough stuff, the things that keep us metalheads up at night. There are many challenges facing our industry and equally many opinions on how we should tackle them. Stirring the Pot provides a facilitated forum to discuss and challenge these viewpoints. So let's get to the nuts and bolts of it. Today our conversation is with Byron Konia, a graduate hydraulic engineer at Norman, Disney & Young. He's a young and vibrant Maori mechanical engineer who I recently met at an industry advisory board at the University of Auckland. Here he openly shared his experiences and logistical issues he faced while studying, something that I hope our conversation today can shine a light on. Byron, tell us a little bit about yourself and what made you interested in engineering.
I think it comes down to like playing Lego and stuff. So as like a young kid, like mum would always buy us Lego and kind of played with that. And coming to year 10, like I always wanted to be a chef for some reason. And then I was sitting there in bed one night, I was like, would I really want to be a chef? And then kind of like was visualising gears spinning in my head. I was like, wait, I actually like mechanical stuff. So I think from that point onwards, I was like, okay, I'm going to engineering. And then I kind of like planned my whole, career so far from that point onwards.
And did anyone try to talk you out of being an engineer?
I don't think they actually knew what it was, to be honest. So when I said engineering, my dad kind of thought mechanic. And I was like, no, I don't want to be a mechanic. I want to design things. And then after that, I think my parents kind of just stopped. They said, oh yeah, we trust you. Where you're going. I remember like my dad saying that, I don't really know what you're doing, son. And guess you know what you're doing, so you might as well just keep going.
And why do you think it is that not very many Maori are going into engineering?
I think a lot of it has to do with perception. From when I've like talked to younger students, it's that university in general is seen for like smart people, and often like Māori have kind of pigeonholed themselves to think they're not smart or that they lack the intelligence because I guess their parents aren't like the typical like university student where their parents have gone to university, whereas like their parents probably more like labour workers working in meatworks and stuff.
And how can we change that and how can industry help change that?
I think with industry, it's if you can send like someone in the company who's willing to like branch out to these small places, like show students what it's actually like to be an engineer. Because I know like at home's like an important thing where you're exposed to kind of what you'll base your life off. So if you can give them an opportunity where they get the exposure they're not getting at home at school, and I think that's how you can kind of bridge the gap.
And so you said you had a vision of the gears. Is that what really drove you towards mech-eng rather than another aspect of engineering?
I think the reason why I picked mechanical was the whole CAD side of it. So I didn't really connect well with most of the subjects we were doing, like the electrical and I liked the biomedical side, but I think the one I most connected with was the ability to like instantly create that we got with CAD, where I could think of something, draw it up on a piece of paper, put it on computer, and then all of a sudden I could then 3D print it. That whole progression of concept to reality is what kind of pushed me towards mechanical.
And how tough was it being one of the very few Maori studying engineering at university?
Oh, you get a lot of casual racism, I found. That was a bit of a pain sometimes.
And what do you mean by casual racism?
Because I got like a few scholarships, like coming to university, they're like, oh, you got Māori scholarships, but they weren't all Māori scholarships. And there aren't that many around either in terms of like engineering. And it's like a common misconception is that everyone thinks that like if you're Maori and you're at university, you've got on a scholarship to get there. But often the scholarships are available or targeted more towards health and polytechs, not so much universities.
And what difference did having a scholarship make?
It made university an option for me. I think if I hadn't got a scholarship, because I've always been kind of financially minded, where if I don't have the means, I kind of blockade myself from doing it. So having that scholarship kind of just said to me, okay, you can afford this now, so you might as well go. Like kind of like follow like what you've planned. And like going like in high school, I kind of planned that I needed a scholarship to get to university. And prior to that, I'd saved for about 3 years working like during the year and then working after school and stuff. And that's how I kind of like funded my way through uni.
Byron, you mentioned the casual racism, and I know even speaking with Kim, and I'm such a big proponent of affirmative action, that she has felt bad in the past to take advantage of specific targeted support for Maori. And I'm always saying, like what I say for women, is that you're getting it on your merits. It's not like you're not getting it because you're not talented or just because you're Maori. You're getting it because you've earned it. Why do you think some people feel bad about taking that additional support? Because really, we're saying, we're in a conundrum because we don't have enough people representing Maori in engineering, and yet the few Maori that are available are also feeling bad about getting support to get there as well. How do you feel about that? What do you think the issue is there?
I think it's more the global perception of it. It's not that you're getting money to do something, it's that once you get the money, then everyone else is like, well, they could have gone somewhere otherwise. I think it's often forgotten that not too long ago Māori was banned, and that the education system in place at the time was designed so Māori couldn't succeed. So I feel like this is almost a late repayment of the damage done. So these scholarships, it's not that people should be entitled to them, it's something that is mostly trying to restore the equilibrium that was distorted. Right?
And what would you say to any Māori students that are out there and are potentially looking to apply for a scholarship or accept a scholarship? What would your advice be?
I'd tell them to don't see it as a handout, or rather as money, because to be honest, you'll never see that money anyways. It goes straight to your course fees, or you might get some to help pay for accommodation. Just see it as a reduced stress on your mind so that you can achieve your goals. But then don't forget that the opportunity you have should also be shared with your community. That you are in essence a gift to your people. So you should try to share it a bit more.
It's a gift that keeps on giving, right? Because you're going to go back like you are now and inspire future generations to become engineers. So it's not just that's helping you, it's helping the whole community, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's what the thing with the scholarship is. It's bigger than what you first think it is. It's not just the dollars in your account.
And what about you mentioned this inherent feeling that Maori have that they're not worthy of going to university. What would you say to Maori people in that regard?
Stop watching TV. Media can often be misleading. Allow yourself to make your own mind up about things rather than following a trend. Spend some time on your own to understand your own thoughts before you kind of speak. Understand that what's happened to your parents or what's happened to people in your family doesn't necessarily have to be your future if you choose it. So I think it all comes down to choice and mindset. If you choose it and your mind's in the right place, I believe it will happen.
What do you think industry is missing out on by not having this engagement with Maori in engineering?
I think they miss a lot of the creative mindsets that are in Māori culture. Like, Māori culture is quite metaphorical. They think very differently to how I'd say normal, like everyone else thinks. You'd get more creativity there wouldn't be just like one option, like some person would come up with like something you'd never have thought of, which I think is something that Māori can bring to industry.
That diversity of thinking. And so you've gone through your undergraduate degree now. How are you enjoying the engineering profession? Are you confident you've made the right decision?
Yeah, no, actually, I'm definitely confident that I made the right decision. It's fast-paced compared to my perception of it, where I'd be like constantly like doing like tasks and that, like just for your first few years and learning. But I found the company I'm working with, I've been given responsibilities quite quickly, and then they've trained me up well and then allowed me to make my mistakes. And then once I've made my mistakes, they've helped me to then go back, reflect, and then kind of produce something better the next time. I think it's kind of something that's quite specific to engineering, where people are quite helpful and they're really good at guiding you. Because often through university, you are teaching your friends how to do stuff that you understand better, then they'll do the same for you. And I think this reciprocal nature is something that I really thrive off within engineering as well as in industry.
And what makes an attractive employer from your perspective?
I think it's like comes down to the manager. The first person you meet of the company is like higher up is kind of what I base the reflection of the entire company. So if you get someone who personally I really click with, then I'd assume straight away that I'd click with the entire business. So that's what I found easy. Like with my current manager, he's also Māori, so as soon as for me, it was also like a respect thing, as well as what he'd achieved, because I respect him because he was Māori and that he's gotten to a point that I'd wanted to get to, but also that he's higher up in the company and his personality matched with mine, regardless of his culture.
And it must be hard being one of so very few Māori in engineering to be called upon to be a role model. Do you feel the pressure of that, or is that something that you enjoy?
It is something that I enjoy, and it's something that became apparent to me when I was in like primary school, when I noticed it, because I went to like basically all Māori primary school intermediate. I think we had about 95% Māori students, and then when I moved to high school it was probably about 10, and then university engineering is probably like 0.1. I think there's like 2 of us in a class of like 300 or so.
That's pretty low numbers.
Yeah, so it became pretty apparent quite early on that I had this opportunity and that I wanted to use it to like grow, expose things, and then hopefully from that point it would then open the floodgates for people younger than me to then go through the pathway a bit easier.
One of the things we discussed at that industry advisory panel at the university was the simple logistics of being able to get you to go back to your home area to talk to kids in high school. What are the logistical issues, and what are the practical aspects of you just being one representing so many and actually being able to get back and talk to people to inspire them?
I think the first part was the whole financial side for me, because I hadn't had much or any financial backing from my parents, and quite often there would be times where you'd have to help out as well. So for me it was just, how am I getting back? How much is it going to cost? And once I got back, it was quite difficult then to organise with the schools. So I went back to my high school because I assumed that would be the easiest way, because I still had contacts there. But you've got so many different classes, and because there aren't that many Māori students, you then have to go to the Māori classes, but even in those there was still very few. And because not all Māori students take Māori, otherwise had I gone into like a normal class, I feel I would have lost my purpose for returning. So I do believe that all students, especially in rural areas, should have the opportunity and exposure to engineering and the option it presents. But specifically, I want to help Māori students. I know that's a bias on my part, but I see them as not disadvantaged, just disillusioned with their own self-worth.
Yeah, that sounds like a big issue, one that's definitely an inhibitor for Maori getting engaged in university even.
Yeah.
So what else could we do? So it sounds like actually, because metals industry is quite a a rural industry. It's regional. Should we actually be having engineers go out to high schools and speaking to people about the career options? And obviously that wouldn't be targeted at Maori, but hopefully would pick up Maori at high school. Is that something that would make a difference, do you think? And at what stages of high school should we target?
Find them, especially with engineering, there being the requirements to get into university. The earliest I'd say would be year 10, and then year 12 is probably the last point you could convince them. So a lot of them, unless they haven't decided yet, or they by chance had planned out and done all the calculus and kind of physics papers, it's very hard to then get them into engineering. A lot of the Māori boys I talked to back in my high school, they had all dropped maths and they'd all dropped physics. So by that point they were only doing unit standards, so that basically regardless of how well they did, they couldn't make the rank score or the entry requirements. So if you can get them at year 10, help them think out the pathway to get there. I know people seem to believe that a 13-year-old can't plan their future, but if you teach someone quite young how to organise themselves, you'd be surprised.
And what about Maori wahine? How do we get more engagement there? Already Maori underrepresented, women are underrepresented. The Maori women must be the least represented.
Yeah, specifically in engineering, there'd be very few, I'd say. In terms of going to university, I think Māori females seem to transition a lot easier. They're more adaptable, I'd say, than Māori men who become quite stubborn and used to their whole father figure being dominant, unmovable kind of force. So they tend to dig in quite hard and are resistant to change, where I think the female, like wahine, are more mobile, but from my experience, they aren't pushed at all towards physics or engineering. They're more pushed towards, say, the more family orientated, or it's difficult to say. There's a lot of
complicated issues.
A lot of my cousin as an example, she's quite mothering, even though she's the same age as me. She's always been that kind of person, and I find that's quite a common trait amongst Māori women, is that they're so used to having children around and they're so used to caring that that becomes quite a focus for them early on. So they'd go into social services or helping out families, or going to law maybe, or other psychology, arts pathways, as opposed to engineering, because they've never given an opportunity to experience it.
Which again, hopefully people from within industry going back to high schools could open people's eyes to what the possibilities are.
Yeah. Once if industry can, especially if you have a Māori woman or a Māori man who can help plan it, because it's very difficult if you've never seen the pathway before to then try to find it yourself. I found personally I was stumbling around quite a bit, and that even though I did get to a point that I wanted to, on reflection I could have done it a lot easier.
So how do you think, how do we go about partnering with Maori engineers to actually be able to get that influence on these high school students who aren't really contemplating engineering? How do we actually partner so that the message is really targeted for them? Because
there being so few Māori in engineering, quite dispersed. So I think Māori in general tend to like to be in groups or like to work together. So I'd say smaller groups or collectives that focus specifically on engineering and returning to schools that are slightly outside of their company. Yes, similar to what Engineering New Zealand is, a body for engineering, but if you had a Māori body for education, but specifically engineering.
And so what gave you the strength then to kind of be independent and go out on a limb and do this so different thing for your family?
Personally, it was because I saw engineering as being a successful future where like I'd obviously like earn better, because it was kind of a constant thing through my upbringing that bills are always coming in. We're always low on money, borrowing money. It's not necessarily because we've like had done the wrong thing. It's just the pathways chosen had led to this result. And with children as well, it's quite expensive, especially if you've got 3 boys like me who just keep eating. My parents I think their main concern wasn't career advancement, it was more making sure that we were well fed. So for me, it's just now I have the opportunity to give my parents what they didn't get to do because they were looking after us.
I think definitely you must be such an inspiration to so many people. What's next for you in your career?
I'd like to kind of build my knowledge more broadly in terms of engineering, not just specifically to building services. And that from that point I'd probably branch out overseas, as well as I've got like a few sporting things I want to try as well. So hoping to kind of compete internationally with strongman and then potentially like powerlifting as well. So I want to help like keep everything together, and then I'd see myself in the future potentially running my own business. And then it was like something that I said like if I ever run a business, I'll hire all my friends from like high school or something around those lines. So I'd like to be able to do that one day.
I think that's a great dream to have. And definitely I think it's within your grasp to achieve it because you are so driven and
Yeah.
obviously so talented.